Peter Eliades with you for Stock Market Cycles update for the week ending Friday, November 1. Time's going by. We'll come back to this chart in a second. First, I want to show you a technical chart that I found very impressive. This comes from the Investec newsletter. I think this was their weekly bulletin. Jim Stack of Investec, really talented analyst. I love his charts. He does technical analysis and he looks at the fundamentals too. But Jim has a great sense of the overall market picture. And he showed this chart to show you how margin debt corresponds or coincides with market movements in the S&P. The chart goes back about 50 years, 1966, 7, 8. And as you can see, as the market peaks out, so does margin debt. Peak in margin debt, peak in the market. I don't have to show each and every one of them, but you can see how it happened historically. The last two major ones being 2000. Look how great the margin debt grew into 2000. Major speculation. And that marked the market peak as it started pulling back. Same thing happened in 2007. A peak in margin debt. The pullback, a very important market top. This decline, by the way, was the greatest decline in the stock market since the 2932 decline. For those of you that are not aware of your market history, I know a lot of you are. And now, look where we are. We came back all the way back to the peak of where we were in margin debt. This is around 2015. We came down, had a pullback, then went off again, and this high in margin debt was reached at the January of 18 high. And now, little by little, we've started pulling back. And despite this latest rally in the market from the December low of last year, margin debt is coming down. That's not a good sign overall for the market. Jim is saying to watch this prior low here that occurred after the 2015 bottom in the market. And if that is broken, he's expressing the sentiment that there could well be a lot more danger for the market. Anyway, I wanted to show you that chart. I thought it was potentially important, and I hope you found it interesting. Now, what I'm going to show you today is a projection that we're really close to fulfilling. I'm going to show you three versions of it. It's, in theory at least, the same offset. It's a 2.5-week offset, which I'm going to show you on intraday charts, on a daily chart, and on a weekly chart, to show you the slight differences in projections, but how they all reach about the same conclusion. Okay, this is the 27-minute chart. And as you can see, we measure from the low that occurred at 28.55 on October 3rd. This is the future, by the way, but it's going to get a little complicated because I use the future and then I use the cash too in the later two charts. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the differences between the different time spans, but the similarity in terms of projections. So this was a low on October 3rd. This is on the futures, the S&P futures without Globex. And we had the crossing here. It was kind of a complicated crossing, above, below, whatever. But the projection software does all that work for us. We broke clear of the offsets in this time zone right in here, and that's when the projection was given. 30.72 on the low end to 31.26 on the high end. That's based on the lowest crossing that took place, which gives you a projection of 30.72, and the highest crossing that took place in this time area right here, this span, that gives you a projection of 31.26. So this is from the 27-minute charts. Let's look at exactly the same offset, but now on the daily chart. And this is what it looks like. Actually, that's the closing chart, not the one we want. Notice that the closing chart, by the way, was met. So that's something, I'm glad this popped up, although I wasn't looking for it right now. But the closing price projection has been met. Remember, we showed you in the last week or two that this measurement low on the for the closing price chart was a lot higher than the intraday, so you were going to get a closing projection that was lower on the way up, because the the close was a lot higher than the intraday low. Intraday low was a real spike to the downside. So this is important to remember that we're well into projection territory on the closing price chart. Okay, the one we were going to look at, however, is the bar chart, and that's this one right here. So the red line represents 12.1 offset, the blue line 13.8. Now these are simplistic versions of that. This is the way I used to have to do it before the projection software. It's actually 12 and 14, not 12.1 and 13.8. The projection software does it exactly, but this one it's a little more easy to visualize with these offsets on. So you can see how we had a low, this is in the cash, of 28.55 on October 3rd, 28.55.94. We had a very clear crossing above, and we got these projections, 30.86.74 to 30.96.07. Not that much different from the intraday ones, and remember, that was futures, this is cash, but the low side on the futures was 30.72, the low side on the cash now is 30.86.74. So we've looked at the intraday equivalent of 2.5 weeks, we've looked at the daily equivalent of 2.5 weeks, now let's look at the weekly chart itself, representing 2.5 week offset. And here we are with that. Now this red line, it looks a little more complicated than a simple moving average, and that's because it's exactly 2.5 weeks moved forward. Everyone used to tell us, well, you can't do that. Can't do that in Windows. You can't do fractional offsets for the weekly things. Well, someone could do it. Our computer wizard, Stefan Sherman from Switzerland, found a way to do it. And that's how this software took place. Now, notice on the weekly that the projection window, let me tell you how we get this projection window. This is interesting. Again, because it's a weekend, it's going to be a slightly longer update, but I'm showing you things that I hope will interest you in terms of the fabulous way this projection software works. When we do weekly projections, we don't have dual offsets, 12.1 to 13.8. The only dual offsets we have in the weekly charts is 39 and 40 weeks for a nominal 78 to 80 week projection, and for the nominal 4-year projection, 100 weeks to 110 weeks. Those are dual offsets. But for the shorter spans, the nominal 5-week, 10-week, 20-week, and 40-week, we have a single offset. And with that single offset, we get a single projection. So you say, well, then why do you have a box here? The box comes about because the original Hurst cycle work was done. When it was done, they used to do plus or minus 10% for all projections to take into account whatever variances may be taking place within the cycles, interference of one cycle with another. So what the projection software does automatically now is it comes up with a projection that is this solid line in the middle of the box, and it also comes up with a plus or minus 10% reading to show you. It does that for you automatically, obviously. And so the actual projection is around 3084 and change, but the plus or minuses give you 306103 to 310660. When I did the calculations, actually, the exact projection was 3083.81. I wrote that down so I could give it to you, just under 3084. And so the move from this low to the projected high of 3083.81 represents 22.79 points. No. Plus 227.90 points. And so the 10% of that is 22.79. So your final projection will be this line plus 2279 minus 2279. I wanted you to be aware of that, and I wanted you to know how the cycle projection software deals with it. But notice once again that using that plus or minus 10%, we moved into that projection window today. So does that mean that's it? It's all over? We go down from here? Well, don't rule that out completely, because once you meet these projections, you've got to be wary and take a look at the longer term and say, do we have other projections outstanding? In this case, we do. We're going to show you that last projection that we have. You're all well aware of it. It's a 20-week offset that gives a nominal 40-week projection. Here's the low of 2346.58. This goes all the way back to the December low of last year. Here's where the crossing took place. We came close to invalidating here, and this time span in August did not get below, and then once again have started moving up towards the projection window. The minimum projection here is 31,1276, but again, remember, this is a plus or minus 10%. The actual projection here is up in this area right around 3,200. So let's say round it off, 3,200 plus or minus 10%. The 10% of what you say, 10% of the complete move from the 2346.58 low to the approximately 3,200 high. You measure that off, and then you say plus 10% of the move to the upside, minus 10% of the move to the downside, gives you this projection window. So indeed, we do have higher projections. I have confidence those projections are going to be met. It does not mean we go to them immediately, though. So a lot of things can happen between here and getting in the projection window. And the fact that we met on some of our offsets, projections today, or are very close to meeting them, will mean that bears very close watching of the market next week. We hope you become interested enough in this software. Those of you that have been watching for the past couple of months have to be aware of the almost eerie accuracy behind these projections and how well they work. And the reason we're doing these free updates, as we've said often, very frankly, is to show off the software. Hopefully, most of you will be interested in purchasing or leasing it. We don't know. You ask when is it going to be ready. A lot of people have asked that question. Probably won't be ready until at the very earliest, the beginning of next year. But we're working on it. We're working on it hard. I keep pressing Stefan because he has other things to do. And we hopefully will be ready towards the end of the year, beginning of next year. If you haven't subscribed yet, bottom right, click on the little red banner, subscribe. Click on the bell once you subscribe. Some people have been telling us that they did click on the bell, but they're not getting notifications. They didn't get one the other day of the special update. So if you are having trouble, please let us know, and we'll have YouTube look into that. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you early next week, probably Monday.